Hello again. Thank you so much for joining me today. I cannot wait to ask you about your job at Reformation.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
Amazing. So, I think to start, it would be really lovely to just get some information on your background. So, like, interests you had growing up that led you to want to work in fashion, and then any experiences you had that yeah, made you continue to be interested in fashion, or then roles you had prior to what you do now, and then also brief description of what you do now.
Yeah, totally. So growing up, well, I grew up in San Francisco, and growing up, I always knew I wanted to be in fashion. I'd always been interested in fashion. I was definitely one of those girly girls who liked to go shopping. Um, and it wasn't until during high school that I kind of started to pursue it a little bit more seriously. And I took a high school course. I was living in Chicago at the time at the Art Institute, which kind of made my love for fashion grow because I had a lot more access to fuller things and professors and teachers. And then that led me to go to Syracuse for fashion. And it's not really known to be a fashion school, but they do have a fashion program. It's pretty small. I think there's only about 14 people in my graduating class, maybe
Wow.
14 people. So pretty small. But I wanted a big school experience while still doing fashion. And I felt that. And honestly, the small class size made it it wasn't super competitive, which was nice. I got a lot more one time with my professors and made a lot of friends in fashion industry that I am still friends with today. About my time at Syracuse, I did a bunch of different internships. My main one that I'd say was most closely related to the job I have now is I was a design intern for Love Shack Fancy my senior year, and then I freelanced for them a little bit after to help them with Fashion Week. And
What do you feel like you learned from doing the social media stuff? I'm curious.
I always liked social media, even with PR and working in LA with a bunch of influencers. I think I learned a lot about trends and how people kind of consume content and consume product. I mean, I think TikTok first and foremost is almost like a product app. I feel like somebody's constantly recommending me something.
Mm.
And I think experimenting with it on a smaller scale, so not for a big brand that has to get all these approvals to go through and create content, was a really cool way to learn about it. And I feel like I just, yeah, learned a lot about that, learned a lot about kind of what works, what doesn't work, just by experimenting on the Moody Goose social media.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I know what you mean. I see a lot of like fresh, seemingly fresh brands hopping on trends and doing beginning to end stories of how their brand came to be. And yeah, there's definitely a lot of potential for exposure, I think, on TikTok.
Yeah.
So
And I love kind of brand storytelling. So I think that was a fun way to experiment. And I like to consume brands that have a very strong
yeah.
storytelling and aesthetic that I can kind of buy into.
Yeah, same. It's weird to look at our own personal behavior when it comes to what brands we like and why. But yeah, I felt a very strong sense of that with Moody Goose, like from the store, the socials. It's just a very comfy, approachable, fun vibe, and
Yeah.
that makes me want to be a customer. So totally get that. Okay, I also want to ask before we move on, what was your experience like at New York Fashion Week? Because again, hear a little bits and pieces about what it's like to work in fashion during that. And then I feel like I see New York Fashion Week from the lens of these influencers who attend events, and it looks so glamorous. So I'm just curious about your experience with New York Fashion Week. I mean, I've never been, and I just wonder what's involved.
Yeah. Working backstage is definitely not as glamorous as attending a show as an influencer or a person. I honestly really like working backstage because I feel although I'd be honored to attend a show as a viewer, I love working behind the scenes. I love being busy, and I love how New York Fashion Week is so high paced. It's like a lot of adrenaline going because a lot of times for some brands, I mean, garments aren't done. They're sewing them, 15 minutes before the show starts, or, your model has to be changed in like 5 seconds and be able to get back out there. I've always found that I really enjoy the people backstage. I think the people who work backstage are obviously there to make the show look great. Obviously, I've had some bad interactions where people are just a little rude just because it's a very high pressure situation. But honestly, all the energy that I feel like is backstage has
Mhm.
been good. I love a show where you don't have to change a model. There's just one model per look. So Altazara, their looks were so complex this past season or the past year. There was no way anybody was changing. So all you had to do was change your model, hang out backstage. But I've always really enjoyed my experience. I feel like it's a really great way to meet people, and it's fun. You still get to go see the show, not from the front, obviously, but you get to see the models and the designer, and yeah, just like experience, kind of like almost like experience the brand not working for them. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's so cool. Yeah. I feel like, especially brands like that, like just to be like somewhat involved would be so, so cool. And like Love Shark Fancy as well. Like, wow. What was it like interning for them? Like, what sort of things did you do for them?
Yeah, so interning, I interned remote, which I think they let me do just because it's an in-person internship, but I asked if I could do it remote. So a lot of my stuff was helping print design, work with like getting print decks together, updating sketches, just like administrative things that kind of help the design team design. And then when I in freelance for them for Fashion Week, that was over the weekend because the whole design team has to come in over the weekend for Fashion Week to get everything done. And that was like hands on, like we're sewing the garments together. And one dress, I think, took us like maybe 9 hours because we had to individually hand beat all of it. So we're like sewing in these tiny crystals and diamond beads for around 8 hours. I think there was like probably six of us working on this dress, but that was a really cool experience. I also, honestly, I mean, I've heard some not so great things about Love Shack Fancy, but I always had a great experience working for them, and I felt like they were all very sweet and kind, and they just have I mean, I just love their brand aesthetic. That's kind of how my
Yeah.
aesthetic is. I'm really frilly and ruffly, and,
Hmm.
they have so much vintage in their New York office. It's insane. So, it's just like how Love Shack Fancy is as a brand isn't exactly how their office is just, like, covered
Wow.
in tulle and pink and just, like, really fun. So, that was, like, a really cool, really great design experience.
Yeah.
And honestly, before I left Shack Fancy, I'd had no design experience. I had no design internships, nothing. So I was like really happy that they ended up going with me and
Mhm.
letting me intern for them and get some experience.
That is crazy. Also, it's crazy to hear about the dress taking that long to sew the beads on. Like, I am just intrigued because, yeah, something like that, like, it's probably gonna cost a lot of money, but, like, knowing the work that goes into it and, like, the intricacy, like, makes that make a lot more sense, you know?
Yeah. Especially, yeah, it takes a lot of time to do that. I'm not really sure exactly with production. Like that was in their New York like city show in February. I
Mm,
don't know. Like I think you can purchase that dress. I don't know how many people are. I don't. The designers are no longer hand sewing it. We were just doing it for the show, but
okay.
yeah, it's just like crazy things. I got asked to paint buttons with nail polish. They gave me some gold buttons and some pink nail polish, and they said these buttons need to be pink. Like, can you paint them? So just like little finishing details like that, and that just like represents New York Fashion Week. I think like it's just very the backside is definitely not as glamorous as the just like an attending an event. People are very stressed. People are somebody was sewing a girl into a dress. Like it's it's a
Wow.
crazy experience.
Wow. I
So
can't wait
yeah.
to experience it one day. One
Yeah.
Um, okay. Thank you so much for sharing all that.
Of course.
And I love how you like are out here emailing people. I think that's amazing.
That's
And
I mean, it's literally like I have cold emails to thank for my entire career. So
that's so
or
cool.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I also wanted to ask you about like what your kind of interviews were like and like what sort of experience like Reformation wanted to see for the role that you interviewed for, assistant designer.
So I think I'll just say this like off the bat. I think me coming recommended from the design director, who is like the top designer, helped a lot because my current manager did say there's a lot of people who applied for the role.
Yeah.
People who are very talented that applied for this role. They feel very lucky that they chose me. But it started with an interview with our print designer, an interview with our head of product operations, which is kind of like taking the full entire like start to finish idea, but on like more the administrative side. And our print designer, Lisa, has been there for I think like 7 or 8 years and she's great. And then it was an interview with our design director of she's currently tops, bottoms, and jumpsuits. So she designs every top we have, every bottom or pants, skirt, and every jumpsuit we have. And then it was with our design director, Jess, who designs dresses, like all of our woven dresses and all of our bridal. So it was like 4 or 5 interviews maybe. And then I had to do a sketch test, which they basically give you 45 minutes and they give you a dress to sketch that they like have you make 2 changes. Like, this is a classic bestseller. What would you do to change it and make it a little different? I would not say my sketches were that great, even now that I'm being retrained on how to sketch. So definitely needed some improvement. But then I had like a final interview and a color test, which was basically just to see if I could differentiate how well I could differentiate colors. And I think another thing I did that really set me up for success with this job was I did a side project of a collection that I would design if I was already working for them, just to kind of show how interested I was in the job and that this wasn't just like okay, whatever. If I get it, I get it. I was like, I feel like taking that extra step, like nobody will ever fault you for that. So I think that really impressed my current manager and the woman who was hiring for this role. And yeah, my final interview, I kind of already knew that I got it because my manager told me that there was only 2 people and down to 2 people. And basically it was kind of like, for lack of a better word, like, when can you start? And then they offered me the job.
Amazing. Wow, so interesting. What I lost my train of thought. Oh, why like you've mentioned like you're now being retrained in sketching. Is there a reason for that? Like do they prefer that like designs are sketched on a similar way? Like does that affect like the production process or like why does that matter typically?
Yeah, so every company has a different way of sketching and how they kind of have their designers sketch. But Love Chef Fancy actually does this as well. Basically, Reformation kind of sketches in more of a CAD like form, and a CAD is basically like, when people think of, I feel like regular fashion sketches, like there's a little model and like she's wearing a little dress or like it's cutesy, and usually you draw a person wearing it. We don't. We just kind of draw just the dress or just the skirt because basically our sketches are getting handed off to our tech designers. So they need to be very detailed. So like the tech designer can see every seam, every zipper, every ruffle. So they just look a little bit more technical. They're still like really fun to sketch. We just sketch it a certain way. Like they use a certain app that they like to use. And like obviously it's like they want to replicate kind of a hand sketch, but on the iPad. So
Okay.
yeah, I've just been currently working with my manager to kind of be able to sketch like the rest of them kind of sketch. So then eventually, probably within the next month, I'll move into like sketching everybody's sketches, like any sketch updates. So if they're like, oh, this doesn't need a bow anymore, take it off, or this needs the bow, I'll be doing all of it.
Okay, okay. What is like a tech designer? Like how does that differ from like what you're doing but by using sketches?
Yeah, a tech designer is somebody who like can see a sketch and they'll make the pattern basically for the dress. So if I sketch like a cute slip skirt, the tech designer will go in and make a pattern. Um, and our tech designers then it'll go into production. They'll get the sample back, and then the tech designer will be like, "Oh, this shouldn't be here. Like we're missing a seam here. We're missing a pleat. This needs to be taken in." So it's just a much more technical aspect, whereas like we are kind of getting inspiration from stuff or different
Mm,
brand, different things, and then designing something. They're taking our designs and making them be able to be like a reality.
okay. Nice. Because I didn't know there were like those separations.
There's a lot of different jobs and different people in each like department that I had no idea. Like, and I don't think many people would know like if your clothes are getting made, kind of like how that works.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm obsessed. Okay. The job you mentioned that someone had that is solely around prints. What is
Mhm.
the job title for that?
She is our print designer.
Print designer. Okay. So that's wild. Like, how does that even come to fruition, a role like that? Like, she's responsible for every print that Reformation uses. So is she like designing like florals, I would imagine, or like, I don't know. Like,
Yeah,
what?
we do a lot of florals. She kind of just designs whatever. It's the same kind of concept of designing like clothing, kind of get inspired by anything. And so she did like a tomato print, a fruit print, kind of she's very vintage inspired. Her outfits are always very cute and vintagey. And so she has a very distinct style too. But she does a lot of like sometimes more abstract prints. And I want to say she maybe majored in like graphic design and then you can kind of move into print design. And yeah, so her job is solely, she's not really in any of our meetings of like fit design. She's solely in print stuff. So that's all she does all day is just design prints. And then she'll take it to our merchandising team and they'll be like, we want this dress in this print. We don't like this print.
Okay.
This one. And then the print will get made into a sample and then we'll decide if we like that sample or if we want it, like maybe the blue will be too dark and we're like, we don't want this dark and blue. So it's a lot of back and forth between like a factory or a manufacturer and like what we actually want to kind of get to that exact style we want.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, that's interesting. So, because I've heard from some friends who work in merchandising or like supply chain in fashion, and like it seems like they're the ones who decide the quantities of different styles that get produced.
Yeah.
So it sounds like that kind of.
Yeah. It's similar to that. Yeah. Like I'm not on the merchandising team, but that's basically essentially what they do. And we work very closely with the merchandising team because they kind of are looking more of like the analytics of like what is selling and what isn't to kind of let us know what the customer likes versus what the customer doesn't like.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah.
So interesting. I was like gonna ask. Oh, for design, so you sketch. Is there any point along the line or like currently at Reformation where people are just like in within like your kind of team of designers? Is that your role to kind of like creatively think of new designs? Like,
Yes. So that's not necessarily under my role currently, just because I have so many other things that I'm doing. But for a designer, like a design director or knitwear designer, my manager who works on top bottoms and jumpsuits, that's her entire role. So her day is mostly filled with inspo sourcing, picking out what fabric she wants to use for her designs, and being in meetings of pitching her designs to merchandisers or merchants to see what will work. And then being in fittings to kind of see how your garment looks. So if a garment comes back and like, it'll be completely wrong. You're like, that was not the sleeve I wanted. I want to see it again. So they'll go back, they'll fix the sample, they'll bring it back. I think we try to have our samples only have come twice. So we see them twice before they go into production. But we had one top that I think is coming out this winter that took, I think, about like 4 or 5 times of seeing the sample over and over again, just because it wasn't executing. And we don't want to send something that's not executing into production. So that is like, if you are a designer, that's most of your role. You're just inspo sourcing, you're designing, and it takes up a lot of time just because being creative, I feel like, and like kind of coming up with cool and new innovative designs that you like take a while.
Yeah. Yeah, I would imagine it's, like, kind of hard to, like, conjure up creative inspiration on, like, a regular basis. I feel like creativity, like, ebbs and flows.
Yeah, totally. So yeah,
So
it's kind of hard. Like you can't pencil in necessarily like be creative at 3 p.m. today.
yeah, totally. Like, you have to be in the mood for it.
Yeah.
So, I wonder about that as well, like, with these big fashion companies, like, how it works for the designers, and then also, like, how designers pick, like, which brand they wanna design for, like, what's gonna affect a designer's desire to work for, like, a really large company versus a really small one, or, like, if it's, like, a Love Shack Fancy where it's, like, super specific vibe going in, they know they're gonna kinda have to, like, at the end of the day, it seems like they're designing for a brand that already exists, that already has a vibe. So, yeah, did you, like, think about that when you wanted to work at Reformation?
Yeah. I mean, I always loved Reformation. Like I loved shopable clothes and I loved the sustainability aspect of it. And I'd say Reformation's a pretty big sized company, but in terms of design team, we're pretty small. And it's very different than like I would assume a designing for an Old Navy or maybe like a Gap that is a huge company that has a very specific kind of persona and clientele where there might not be as much like wiggle room to kind of experiment. I think Reformation definitely has a different persona and clientele, but we have like a lot of different options. And sometimes our merchants will be like, we don't like this top. And as a designer, I know my manager has fought for some top or some garments to be like, this will be cute. Let's experiment and try. And they've done really well. So I think there's a lot of room for growth at Reformation, which is what I was kind of
Yeah.
looking for. And I was kind of just looking for a job that I could grow in and really learn. And I think being at a middle-sized company is great for that because it's pretty, I mean, Reformation's pretty established,
Mhm.
but it's not a huge company
Yeah.
lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like, this is probably an excellent opportunity for you to, like, experience the whole range of things as opposed to, like, one niche role that they have you in and you're, like, in for a really long time. So,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, that's very exciting. Okay. Another question I want to ask you is, like, what sort of things have you learned about, like, just the clothing production process in general through your experience as a designer? Like, very, very curious about that.
Yeah, I feel like I knew to some extent the nitty-gritty of designing clothes, but only my own, really. Like,
Mhm.
I had only ever designed and sewed my own collection, and that's completely your style and your call. But I feel like I've learned a lot, especially with Ref, which deals with a lot of dead stock fabrics and sustainably sourced fabrics. So dead stock is basically fabric that's already been produced. It's like excess fabric that we can then go in and purchase and make our clothes out of it to kind of use up fabric that's already been made instead of creating new fabric. And I really never knew what that meant. um, I never really, even with working at Ref on the retail level, I didn't really know to the full extent what that meant. But we have a full sustainability team that vets our fabric and makes sure we can use it. And kind of just the process of, yeah, like bringing a garment from a sketch to a pattern to a sample and then sampling it and seeing it go into production. So it is cool to see kind of like what's coming out and what like will be hitting stores eventually, like months in advance. But
Yeah, that's so cool.
yeah,
Affirmation.
and like I mean, there's been times where we've like seen something and it's not executing, and we've just canceled it then and there, and been like, nope, we're not going to do this anymore. It doesn't look cute. Uh,
Mm.
so we didn't even know people really did that. So it's been really
Mm.
cool to see behind the scenes.
Okay. Yeah, I actually, like, just looked at Ref the other day and saw something about dead stock. So they're clearly, like, marketing, that they have dead stock, like, a dead stock collection now or something.
Yeah. Or yeah, dead stock, I think.
Is that new for them? Do you know? Or like, what did they do in the past to create clothing sustainably, if not using dead stock, like in the past or like
Yeah,
historically?
we try to use, for the most part, if we have like a running fabric of like poplin or stuff that isn't dead stock, that's just like what you would see like a sheer dress that just can come in a print, for example, like we're making it ourselves. We try to use more sustainable fabric. So non non-synthetically made viscose is a big fabric we use, which isn't always the best fabric to use. It's definitely more sustainable, and it's just not as chemically like processed to the same extent as polyester. But I think a lot of the stuff I work in is mainly dead stock, unless it's like a silk or a fabric like that.
Mhm.
I'm forgetting the word now, but
Satin. Yeah.
okay.
Like satin.
Yeah, just non-synthetically made fibers that make up fabric. We try to use non-synthetic.
Okay. Okay.
We've been using dead stock, I think, for quite some time. I think they might have just pitched the idea of dead stock like as a collection.
Um, yeah, I mean, they should tell people, that's awesome
Yeah,
because they're just not they're not creating any more fabric by doing that, which is really cool.
yeah,
Yeah. Do you know, like, I'm so curious about this, like, team of people who measure the level of sustainability. Like, do you know anything that's like involved in that or like what these people do to check that things are going a certain way or like, are there any like rules and regulations that Reformation has to follow or anything?
yeah. I think I don't know too much about it since the person I work with the most is our dead stock sourcer. Um, so she sources a lot of dead stock. We have companies that we go to specifically for dead stock, and they'll send us a bunch of like fabric headers, which is basically just a swatch of fabric. That we can kind of be like this one, we don't like this one, we like that one, we don't like this one. And the way we use dead stock is if they tell us there's 1,400 yards of this fabric, and we say, great, we're going to purchase a bunch. And we come back and they say, oh, we have another 150 yards of this fabric or something like that. We know that it's not dead stock because you can't, it wouldn't exist anymore, essentially. So if they come back and say there's more of that fabric than they originally said, it's it's not dead stock anymore. And I think we have a team that kind of goes in and just makes sure that the suppliers we use are ethical and sustainable within themselves. I know that we produce stuff as import, which is overseas. We do produce some stuff, but we have people, I believe, who go to our places across and like overseas to make sure that working conditions are good. And then we also have our factory in LA that makes a majority of our stuff.
Okay.
That who makes a majority of our stuff. And now that I'm saying it, maybe it's just import because that's the fabric we're using is coming from overseas. But either way, a lot of our stuff gets made in the warehouse that's literally connected to our office space in downtown LA. So you like
Okay.
can walk through all the sewing
Okay.
machines and stuff. Like
Okay. Okay. So that's so interesting. So it sounds like with a dead stock thing, some people will market their material as dead stock, but then it's not necessarily legit dead
yeah,
stock.
we have to go through like a team that makes sure that the dead stock is available. Like for instance, just even today, we requested a shirt to be made in like a pinstripe, and our dead stock supplier came back and was like, "We don't have it anymore. It's gone. Sorry." So now we have to go back and figure out a new fabric we want to use for that shirt because it's sold out.
Oh.
Yeah. So it'll kind of, or there's a couple dresses. We hated the sequin of it. So we'll try to source other ones, and it'll just like push back the process a little
Yeah.
bit longer sometimes just because it takes a while to source like a certain fabric type and then also be able to get it on time.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That sounds like an issue for like, I guess, just thinking about like what brands are doing now to be sustainable, like the dead stock approach, it sounds like not necessarily unreliable, but definitely like harder to make estimations with. And then the whole thing where like if they make a specific item of a certain material or pattern of dead stock, and then that is like very finite,
Mhm.
like they can't necessarily reproduce it if it becomes super popular.
Yeah.
So
It
that's
is, definitely. So, for example, we just launched, like, a very J. Crew looking, like, jacket called the Dale, and I believe it sold out, and it was a dead stock, so we
mm,
can't we can't reproduce that exact one, but we'll source fabric similar to that, so that's what we're doing right now, um, to create the jacket again. It just won't be exactly that fabric. We'll just try to replicate it as best as we can. So yeah, it just kind of depends, or we'll maybe make it in a different color.
yeah.
But yeah, sometimes if it's really popular, we'll recut it in a fabric that's very similar, but it will never be like the exact same if it's a dead stock.
Mhm. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay. Yeah, that's really cool. Now I want to like check it out, like see what's available.
yeah, we also source at a fabric place here that I've been to called Rag Finders, and I believe, do you know the brand Oddly?
No, I don't.
Oh, they're really cool. I'm trying to figure out a way to honestly work with them on the side because they are so cool. They do sustainable fashion very slow. They're a very small brand, but I know for a fact, go to Rag Finders because I saw a shirt that was made like oddly style at Rag Finders.
Okay.
But it's a place in LA where you can go source dead stock fabrics.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Really cool. Okay. I need to look them up now. I'm like mentally just like bookmarking that.
Yeah.
Um,
They're really cool, slow fashion brand that I think they just relocated to LA. It was like two girls who went to Stanford who started the company. They're all that slow.
wow. So cool. Okay, good to know. Okay. A couple other questions I'd love to ask. Like, so one, you mentioned that you designed your own collection, I think for school, right? Like at one
Mhm.
point. Okay.
Yeah.
And you like did everything from like start to finish and stuff.
Yes. Yes. That's like our senior capstone as designers in Syracuse is making a 6-piece collection. And then you have a show at the end of the year.
Okay. So as part of your like degree, did you like already know how to sew or like did you learn or like how did you make the clothes that were in your capstone collection?
Yeah. You do have to learn how to sew. Some people came to school knowing. I did not know really how to sew that well. I was not a confident sewer at all. I wouldn't even actually say I'm that confident of a sewer now. It's definitely not my strong suit. And I will admit that. But they taught you how to sew freshman year. Like, I mean, when my friends were taking like their finals, my final was like to be able to sew a bag together or be able to do a straight stitch. And yeah, so then as a senior, you start with a collection idea and you go from 100 sketches to 50 to 25 to 6. And then you have your entire semester where that's the only thing you're working on is just sewing together pieces, and they don't really check on you. It's like kind of like your own timeline. It just has to be done. So yeah, it was a really fun experience and a really cool way to like have a final. I'm a very like visual creative person. So I was always used to having like my finals be final presentations and stuff.
Yeah. That is so cool. Wow. Making
Yes.
clothes. Do you ever do it still now, like on the side, if there's like something that you want, but like can't necessarily find, and or like will you ever like get clothes and then like modify them a little bit? Like I don't
Yeah, so now I sew just as a creative thing, and I actually do. I like now that I'm not getting great at it. I enjoy sewing. Um, and I do it especially with things I can't necessarily afford, like the brand Fancy Club. Their tops are like $300, and I mean, it's a simple top you can make yourself, and it's awesome for online make it. So I just followed her tutorial and made it myself. And yeah, now I'd say it's more of like a hobby that I'd like to do, and I'm trying to get back into it post like
yeah.
move to LA and just finding time to do it after work. 'Cause I do really enjoy sewing. I think it's so cool to make clothes or some things. And I will always hem something. If I don't like it, I'll always hem it or will hem other people's clothes. It's always been my signature thing for other people. Or even like we had some samples that don't go to sample sale, we get to pick from. And if I don't like them, I'll just adjust them. So,
Yeah. That's such a good skill. I've been meaning to learn. I like sewed a little bit when I was a kid, like my mom had a machine.
mhm.
But sometimes I just like have a top that just needs like a little bit of assistance to fit better.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this would be good, but it's tricky when the fabric's different. It's like stretchy or like maybe silk, and it's like you don't want to, I don't know how to deal with that. So,
Yeah. It's definitely like, I think clothes construction is so interesting and can definitely be kind of hard. There's some things that I'm like, I don't know how I would really fix this. But definitely with any hemming or just kind of like taking it in, that's like, I'm like, but I can fix that myself. Like,
yeah.
um, so it is really like, it's a nice skill to have to be able to do it.
Yeah, definitely. Um, okay. What is your favorite part of your job so far?
Yeah. I'm going to pull my bike. Getting in the car.
I know, saves.
One
And we'll
late.
probably do like 5 more minutes ish if
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
okay.
No problem. I was just like realizing the sun was like setting.
Yeah.
Um, I think my favorite part of my job right now is being able to learn a lot about all the different categories that I assist with and kind of be able to just like sit in. I feel really lucky to sit in on meetings and they'll always thank me for doing tasks that are part of my job description. And I think they think maybe I would be like, oh, I'm above this task. And I literally am like, I'm above nothing. I will come in. There's a while where I was updating the print wall, which is a wall we have in our office with all of our prints on display. So when we look at what prints we want to buy, they're just up there already, but it hadn't been updated in like a really long time. So that was like probably a 3 week, 4 week project. And I would come in on days that we would work from home and I would just, that would be my task. And our print designer came up and was like, thanks for doing that. I really appreciate it. Like the last girl who you worked here was like, I felt like I had to force her to do it. So I think, yeah, being able to like sit in on meetings. My favorite thing I get to do for this job is our key items, which is basically like sourcing inspiration for upcoming collections or books or drops or pieces. And then I present them to the design team every week because I just do that on my own time. I will make mood boards and
Yeah.
source inspiration. So doing that as my job is really fun because
Yeah.
I would do that without getting paid anyway. So
Yeah. That's amazing. Wow. So fun. Oh my God. The Prince of Reformation. Like, what?
yeah,
Wow.
it's a really I really like the environment. I feel like I've never really liked like really super cutthroat. I think that's so stressful. So I
Mhm.
like working in an environment that doesn't feel like that and it's a lot of like strong, inspiring women who are amazing, are very talented in their field.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Like, so also on that note, like having the experience that you have so far and like just like seeing what it's like in the job and like maybe the future of your role and everything. Like, have you thought more about like, what you could see yourself really working towards in the future or like what you would like love to do one day? Like, I don't really know what that looks like for like career trajectory for fashion designers, but like, I don't know. What is something that you would like love to work on one day?
Yeah, I would love I don't know if I have a particular brand anymore that I'd like to work for long term. I would love to be the creative director of a brand or the design director. So the job my like his boss has, where I kind of am eventually just designing and then picking what to be designed. But I think I kind of like creative director a little bit because I also love marketing campaigns and a creative director kind of overall just oversees the image of a brand. So I think my dream job would be something like that for like a really cool brand. Like that's really fun and out there,
Yeah.
and just does some cool campaigns. I mean, there's a brand, French brand. It's started by an influencer, very similar to Jerf Avenue, like Matilda Jerf's Jerf Avenue, called Rouge. I feel like a lot of people know it, but
Mhm.
they just did a really cool New York campaign to open up their New York store. And I just love looking at brands marketing and kind of like
Yeah.
creating a community within a brand. So I think eventually I'd like to move into a position like that. Well,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. I've always like thought Reformation's marketing was very good.
Yeah. They are. I'd love to be the creative director of Reformation. That'd be really cool too. That'd be
Yeah. Like, I don't know. I feel like their emails that I have like been subscribed to for a while and then their Instagram will always sometimes just like make me double take. Like, I don't know. This is what they say. It's
yeah,
just
our
like,
marketing team is very good. I think our Got Boobs campaign did very well. I remember my friend sent that to me. Like, I think that was like very successful. And they just come up with like the funniest,
yeah, they're really funny.
weirdest email campaigns that really make you like, there's been times like, I mean, I get those emails all the time. It's in my work email, so I never look at it. But
Yeah.
there's been times where I'm like, wait, I'll click on the email and read it.
Yeah. I love it though, because I feel like it's like such a saturated market. So whatever you can do to stand out goes a really long way. And like, it's almost like if you're not standing out, you're probably going to get left behind, you know? So,
Yeah. I
yeah.
think, yeah, Reformation does a good job at that. And I think our like designs and stuff that we have coming out is like fresh. And honestly, like besides maybe vintage shopping, I feel like the fashion, like just shopping in general can be really overwhelming. It's just because I've had people like, because they know I like to shop, ask me like where to shop and stuff. And now I mainly just shop at Reformation if it's not. I'm shopping at like Community Goose or like vintage
Mhm.
stuff. But I feel like it's nice to have a brand that like consistently has stuff you like and like,
Yeah.
because yeah, going into some stores, I just will feel really overwhelmed, like having to look around, like search and dig for stuff that I kind of like. So
Yeah, definitely. Reformation consistently, like it has it down. Like, yes, I know.
yeah, I like the stuff they have. So I always purchase Reformation, and I know I can wear it to work, so it works.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, they have really good, like chic, classy, but like kind of dressy work clothes. And then I always recommend them for bridesmaid dresses or like wedding guest dresses, actually.
Yes, we're like very known.
Yeah,
for-
they're perfect for that.
yeah.
So many options. But okay, I think I would love to end with actually two questions. First question, how is it so far like living in LA, having come from San Francisco, and then just like having the interest in fashion that you do? Because I feel like they're very different vibes when it comes to like clothes and like art scene and like, I don't know, stuff like that.
Yeah, I have actually, so I was kind of opposed to moving to LA at first. I didn't want to. Post grad, everybody from my school moves to New York, and a lot of my friends live in New York. So I was really set on moving to New York and was going to move this past year. So when I moved to LA, basically was when I was planning on moving to New York, but I got this job and I didn't want to turn it down. I actually really have started to like LA. I feel like it's just like a world away from San Francisco. I feel like SF is just such a different vibe, but in a good way. I like both vibes. And yeah, I think the fashion here is like much more laid back, especially compared to New York. A lot of the girls in the office just kind of dress very casually. I feel like it's just more like, I don't know if it has to do with like you're just like by the beach and the weather's nice. Like, I feel like the fashion, at least for ref, I feel like is very like LA laid back girl. But I really enjoy it actually. And I feel like there's a lot of opportunity. And like I was saying, one of my goals is to work for Oddly. And I think just like when I was in San Francisco, I like to do a lot of different things. So I think now that I'm kind of more settled into this role, I'm going to search for other things to do on the side. Like I worked with MEJ as a freelancer and they're based in LA and I would love to work with them again. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, I would. So just like, I think there's a lot of opportunity and I'm excited to
Yeah.
live here and work in a place like LA is not like a bad city by any means.
Yeah.
A lot of like fashion opportunities here and a
Mhm.
lot of companies based here. So it's been a
Mhm.
really actually good experience.
Good. I'm so glad. I'm glad it's going well.
Thanks.
I then like also just wanted to end with question of like anyone who's looking to get into fashion, advice to them and like, against any apprehensions. I feel like I don't have experience in fashion, so I don't know what apprehensions one might have about getting into fashion. But yeah, I guess advice to someone who's like starting out, because you clearly have like created a lot of opportunities for yourself and like had a lot of different experiences. So I feel like you'd have really good advice to give to someone looking to get into the industry.
Thanks. I honestly was really nervous when I was applying to things because I didn't have a lot of experience, even though I was a fashion major. I mean, those were like, there's a bunch of fashion majors. My honest advice is cold emailing. I really think, like, I mean, you can look at people's emails on LinkedIn, you can connect with them, just look up their email. I would find their position on LinkedIn, look up like their name and their email, and then go through and reach out. I'd like send like to like three different email addresses, hoping one would work. I think there's no harm in that, and like kind of just making connections. A lot of times I would just ask for honestly an informational interview right off the bat, just because, you know, why not? And then if a job appeared, I'd be like, oh, by the way, I applied. And I think for somebody who maybe doesn't have like a lot of experience or something, just starting to do things you like if you start working on projects that you like, that's how I ended up working for MEJ. Was I just made a project and posted it on TikTok, and just the founder saw it and reached out.
Cool.
And yeah, just kind of like slowly, I guess, building what you like to do as a side. Like, I mean, as a passion project, that's like a great way to start. And I think just, yeah, putting yourself out there. I mean, there's no harm in doing that. Like, the worst that can happen is somebody doesn't respond or doesn't work out
Yeah.
and you'll find something else. So,
Yeah. I love it. I think that's amazing advice.
hey.
But yeah, those are all the questions I have. So yeah, thank you so much, Maya. This has been
Yeah, thank
amazing.
you. I feel honored to be interviewed. I was so happy when you reached out.
Good. It's like you're the first. I guess technically I've had Fruit Faith on here and she has designed clothes. But I was gonna say like
Oh, I love her.
fashion designer. So
Yay, I'm excited.